In early September of 2019, we decided to go on a vacation to visit Bergen, Norway. And so that is where Bergen is located, right over there. It's on the western part of Norway. Gets a lot of rain. We had a couple days of on and off rain while we were there, but we actually lucked out and had 2 days of nothing but full sunshine. So why Norway? Why would we want to possibly go to Norway? Well, there were a bunch of reasons why I wanted to go to Norway. One was it's been a little while since we've done international travel. I've been a little bit gun shy about going overseas since Trump became president, not knowing if we'd ever get back into the country. But in any event, we've been doing a lot of domestic travel, and some of my travel videos on YouTube will attest to that. We also missed an opportunity to go to Scandinavia, Norway in particular, when we lived in Germany in the mid 70s. I was there on a research grant, and our car conked out. Our used Volkswagen conked out, and it was near the end of our stay in Germany. We had planned to go up to Norway, actually, and just never made it. I didn't bother getting another car. So that's always been in the back of my mind. And then, not long ago, within the last year and a half or so, we were at a very small concert venue in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, and we sat with a couple that had just come back from Norway, and they were telling us all about their trip and their experiences and the fjords and the trains and everything. And that kind of reminded me, hey, we haven't really done anything with Norway yet. And also, I've always wanted to see the fjords, as has my wife. So, for all of these reasons, it kind of gelled and came together that we should go to Norway. And then what really drove the nail into the coffin, as it were, I saw a disaster movie on Netflix called The Wave. It's very well done as disaster movies go. This was actually a Norwegian film, not a jazzed up Hollywood production. So I think it was done properly. And so it takes place in a fjord and what might happen if things go awry in a fjord. So there is the poster for the Norwegian film The Wave. It has English subtitles and pretty good acting, actually. Was followed up by a film with the same actors called The Quake. But we're going to focus here on The Wave. These are just a couple scenes of what can happen in a fjord. This happened as a result in the movie of a massive landslide on the land. Well, a fjord is kind of a self-contained body of water with mountains on both sides. So the only way the water can go out if something generates a huge wave is like this, what you see on the bottom. These are some selected clips that I made from the movie showing the generation and now the propagation of the wave along the fjord. And of course, in the movie, nothing good comes of this. Actually, in the end, things kind of come together in a good way. But I'm not going to do any spoilers beyond that. But yeah, this could really happen. And if there was a massive landslide, and here comes the wave, and there go running the people. Lots of luck with that. There they go, trying to get to higher ground, and one of them is limping. Ain't gonna happen in the near future. Anyway, that the actual wave thing could happen when you think about it, if there were to be a massive landslide. But anyway, I love the movie, and so all of this comes together, and now I want to go to Norway. So, days 1 and 2. Why days 1 and 2 combined? Because we fly from Boston, Massachusetts. On day 1, there is, where's Massachusetts? There's Massachusetts down there. Fly from Boston. We drove from our home in Connecticut to Boston, about an hour and a half drive, because they have better flights out of Logan International Airport. And then we flew directly to Amsterdam, which is up in the Netherlands, somewhere in this area, and then caught another plane from Amsterdam up to Bergen. So when we land in Bergen to claim our luggage, um, we were looking for a bathroom, obviously, and that's how the bathrooms in this area were designated. I think it's pretty obvious to tell which bathroom is for men and which is for women. So as we're exiting the airport, and of course it's raining, there's this sign, and I never clarified. I should have. I never clarified where there's a question mark after Bergen. It didn't seem to make any sense. It's like this is literally where I'm viewing this from within the airport, and there it is right there opposite the airport. I say maybe it's saying, "Are you sure you wanted to go to Bergen?" I don't know what it means, but in any event, it was relatively iconic, and you knew definitely what city you were in. You just didn't know why you were there. So we checked into the Opus 16. I made all our reservations well in advance. This is one of the trips that I planned entirely on my own, which I found actually a great deal of fun. So this is a heritage hotel, and it is actually like this. The music you're hearing is by classical composer Edvard Grieg, and this hotel has a lot of Grieg material in it, as you'll see in a moment. This is the breakfast room, if you can believe that. Free breakfast. And that's where you sit to have breakfast. This also converts to a place to have dinner later on. We found other places to have dinner, but nonetheless, that was pretty elaborate when you think about it. So this was the room we stayed in. It's the Suite Marin. They have a number of suites that are named after different things. I think they all in some way relate to Grieg. Now, in our case, Marin was named after Grieg's older sisters. I guess, now that I think about it, how could they both have been named Marin or married the same person named Marin? I don't know. I don't want to know. Anyway, that is a sketch of the layout of the suite. So there is a living room area over here, a bedroom area over here, great views out the window over here, and one bathroom over there. So when we checked in, I just took some photos before we all messed it up with luggage and unpacking and all that kind of stuff. That's the bedroom, obviously. And now, so the bedroom is back in here, and now we're out in the living room. There is a coffee thing over here. You can't quite see it. That's for tea. And there's no, I'm sorry, it was not complimentary, so we didn't drink it. There was a bottle of Syrah wine over here with wine glasses over there. There's a mini bar, and I did actually make it into the mini bar for 2 candy bars while we were there. And so, again, this is the living room area. That's a sofa, and this is the desk in the living room, where in the evenings I spent a considerable amount of time on my laptop. Downstairs, and if you go down one level beyond the lobby level, this whole wall is dedicated to Edvard Grieg and his whole history. It's nice because it's written both in English, as you can see here. So the reddish print, everywhere you see that, is in English. And then Norwegian is the dark print all along the wall. So it's very easy to read. And there's this really nice time frame along the bottom of things that were happening during Edvard Grieg's lifetime. And again, in Norwegian and in English. So that afternoon, after we rested, because, it's a 6-hour difference from the Boston area. So it was an overnight flight, very hard to sleep on the plane. I can't fall asleep on airplanes, so I didn't. I closed my eyes, nothing came of it. But we rested up a bit, and then later in the afternoon, we just started walking around the area of the hotel. And in fact, there is our hotel right there. It says Opus 6. It's that brownish building right there, not the one with the plastic on it. And so there's this statue. This is, you can see we're very close to a main area that's like 2 minutes away to walk to, a big tourist area. So we were getting a little hungry, and so we were looking for something not too elaborate. And so we stumbled upon this restaurant called Egon. And there it is right there. It's in a very scenic building. And there's the way into Egon down there. You'll notice, of course, there is a Starbucks in the same building, which we did not go to ever. But even though I love their coffee, but that's not why we were in Norway, and there were other places to go that were more interesting than that. So we went to Egon. Found out once we were inside, actually it was a chain, but it was a Norwegian chain. And there were a couple others that were spread in different cities in Norway. So this is just a view from where we were sitting. It's really nice inside. And let's see, I had the Thai curry soup, and you can see it there. Some really good bread as well. And my wife had apple cake. Neither of us were super hungry. So mine was an appetizer on the menu, actually, and hers was listed as a dessert, and those were great. Now we're rested up. We were able to sleep that night, and now we have our third day, technically, and we're ready for action in Bergen. So here's the breakfast room once again. Now, check out this buffet. Look at these are all fish, okay? For those who, by the way, I don't like seafood at all. I will eat crab cakes if done in a certain way. And it's very hard for me to find that certain way, but I will do that. And I'll eat Nova, which is the same as lox, only less salty. But just look at all this stuff. There's crab claws. I mean, it's amazing. I sort of invaded the meat area. So this is a table that has a variety of different kinds of meat. These are all native to Norway, which is really cool. And cheeses, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. By the way, this is a brownish cheese that is found in Norway, and I had some of that. It's kind of sweet. It's not like a super strong cheese by any means. And it tasted very interesting, but I decided I wasn't going to get it again because it just wasn't interesting enough for me. So I focused primarily on these kinds of cheeses over here, and especially on these sliced cheeses over here. And then a salad area for breakfast, and all these jams and jellies in there on the same table with all of the breads, which were phenomenal. As you can see here, this was our favorite. My wife calls it dry corn brot, 3-corn bread, because that's what it was called when we lived in Germany for about a year and a half in the mid-70s. But you can see there's all kinds of different ones that you can get. You just throw a towel around it and chop away with a knife and get whatever thickness you like. And then down here, there's all these different things. This kind of crispy cracker type bread was actually quite good. I didn't try this one, but I actually liked this one a lot. I should have brought some home because you could buy some that were all packaged up, but I didn't. I never tried these pretzels. I just couldn't. They didn't look like real pretzels. I just didn't want one for breakfast. And then there's all these pastries over here. And there's a close-up of those. I did have a croissant one time. I tried one of these, which was actually pretty good. It was different. And I stayed away from these more common pastries as far as I can recall. Oh, I did have a chocolate croissant one day. Oh, there's the chocolate croissants over there. And, of course, cereals of all kinds. By the way, this is a complimentary breakfast. I'm not paying extra for this. Well, I'm sure a part of it's included in the room rate. But this is pretty amazing. And then we have fruits, and I guess those are yogurts over there, and all kinds of fruits. And there's watermelon and God knows what kind of berries. I guess there's strawberries there and probably raspberries. And, of course, pineapple. Oh yeah, I can see them here a little bit better. I mean, this is the nice thing. They did have these things labeled in both languages, so you had a sense of what it was you might not be certain about. And again, I mean, this is breakfast. Remember, we never ate lunch. We were never hungry for lunch, and come dinner time, we were only barely hungry for that after sort of having a breakfast like this. And these are all kinds of juices. I didn't have any of those. And there it is. There's what the breakfast room actually looks like. And by the way, if that's not enough for you, in addition, or you could do it instead, but you could also do it in addition, they have this menu that you could order from. Now there was nothing on the menu I really liked, so I like smoked salmon, but the part with the scrambled eggs kind of turned me off, and so I decided no, I'm just going to do the buffet. But if you're really hungry, you could go for this. Okay, after breakfast and recovering from eating that much, we met our tour guide at about 10 o'clock in the morning. That's Norway time. Again, 6 hours earlier than American time on the East Coast, at least. So I scheduled two tours by locals. I don't think I've ever used them before on our other trips, but they seem to be the best deal in town. And we like private tours. We like having our own guide who we could interact with, ask whatever we want. They typically will tailor the tour to whatever extent possible to your own interests. And so, yeah, I found this. Sue got great reviews as one of the locals for Bergen. And so this was called, on the website, the Bergen City Overview Tour, which was a 3-hour walking tour. And so we first stopped, once we met, at our hotel, shortly outside the hotel, because it's within steps of the hotel, literally, again, about 2 or 3 minutes, to the fish market, which is iconic. And here is a video that I guess the fish market hired folks to put together. But it gives you an idea. There's an indoor portion that you see here. And I'll tell you, if you're into fish, this is nirvana. For me, it was kind of like a smelly nightmare. Not quite that bad. The whole thing smelled of fish, of course. There were some interesting fish there. I mean, those crayfish you saw a moment ago, they were large crayfish, larger than I've seen here in the States. And there were some really cool crabs as well in a tank that were kind of like doing crab things. And so that's the inside of that market. And one of the things that she pointed out on the inside were these dried cod, which have an interesting historical value because back in the day, I mean, like centuries ago, this was a main commodity of Norway because you would dry it, and so it didn't need refrigeration. And there was no refrigeration, so it worked out very well. You could put it in like some kind of a sauce and make it soft again, or you could just eat it dried as is like you would with beef jerky, for example. And then there was also dried sheep hanging as well. So that was another thing that they used to serve dried. Okay, so these are some of the some still shots of some of the counters. If nothing else, they're very colorful, whether you like fish or not. Those are those crayfish, and again, all kinds of fish. One of them is, I think is it either smiling or growling at me. I don't know what it is. It's dead. Okay, so after the fish market, we walk around some more. This will become apparent later on a subsequent day. There is a funicular that goes from down here somewhere up there for incredible views, but that's going to come on another day. This, by the way, is the outer portion, the outside portion of the fish market. Okay, so that's just another angle. And if you go to that outside portion, you see all kinds of vendors that have prepared things that you could sit down and eat right there, and things that you could just take along with you, as we see here. I mean, I guess in the fish world, if it exists, they have it, more or less. So we keep walking around. Again, it's a walking tour. She shows us this sailor's monument. The interesting thing I thought about this is the hats that the actual real life Vikings wore. It is this helmet right here. Here we'll have another view of it from closer up. There's no horns sticking out of the sides. Here it is. That's the same guy right there. It's very different from here's another one right over here at the end. It's very different from what's portrayed by Hollywood in anything having to do with Vikings, where they have horns coming out of their helmet. No, I'm sure the Norwegians are clueless as to what started that, but it was not real. And this is just a little bit further up on that same monument, some really interesting figurines. I asked about this eagle, but Sue did not really know the reason for that being there, so we don't know. But there's a Viking ship right there, which is in fact characteristic of what you do see in the various Hollywood productions. This is called the Bergen, as in Bryggen. There, you see it right there, the Bergen. This is probably, as Sue pointed out, the most photographed set of buildings in Bergen. And they go back a long, long time. Some of them have had to have been rebuilt, and some of them are pretty much the way they always existed. But the interesting thing about these buildings is if you have to rebuild any part of them, you have to follow the rules that were in existence when they were initially built. And that includes using the same tools that were available back then, not things that you can get your hands on now in terms of power tools and God knows what. The only exceptions that can be made, I think, were for if you're doing a small portion of a renovation and those tools from the original building are absolutely not to be found anywhere, you can get permission to use on a limited basis something that's more modern. So they are trying to be as authentic as possible in keeping these buildings working and up to date. And there's another view actually from across the water. I shot that on a subsequent day. So it's basically we're looking at these buildings right in here. Some of them have alleys in between. They're very, very narrow. And you can see actually how they're constructed. Some of them had living quarters in them, and I assume those are probably up here. I'm probably forgetting a lot of details. But in any event, people who would work in these buildings would also live there in pretty horrible conditions, actually, like bunk beds with 2 people per bed. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But hey, you know, that was then and this is now. Then you walk to the end of that alley, and you see this. This is a cod. Cods are not that big, okay? That's point number 1. This is just a statue that somebody created that looks like a cod. And one place we stopped, which was really, really cool, is and you're going to have to pardon my pronunciation. I don't speak a word of Norwegian. Bergen Traktorsted, or however one would say it. This building dates back to 1708. It is the oldest restaurant in Bergen, and that's why we went inside. So this is the bottom floor. There's 2 restaurant areas on the bottom floor where you can just get drinks, have lunch, stuff like that. And so that's a view from the table. We actually came back later that day and had some drinks. And you can see, I don't know how well you can see it. The picture doesn't do it justice. But things are curved downward because, again, it's an incredibly old building. You might be able to see that this is slanted to some extent. I think it's slanted because everything else is curved downward. And in fact, our tour guide said if we do come back here to have anything to eat, like if we get soup, be careful that it doesn't slide down the table. I had a beer, an IPA actually. It did not slide anywhere, but I could see where if you're not careful, it could have. I mean, there's a bit of a curvature in that room. There's an upstairs area. This is where they serve dinner. So this is a little bit more in style. Okay, so this thing over here on the wall is actually a whip that was used to whip people who got out of line. This is not recent, thank goodness. What's more, it's made out of a bull's penis. So you can use your own imagination. I am just not saying anything more about that. And then on this wall, again, we're still in that upstairs room. That, of course, is a dried cod. That's the real thing. I mean, that's the size of a dried cod. They're still big fish, but they aren't as gigantic as that carved statue that we saw a moment ago. So again, this gives these are two pictures that give you a sense of the way these alleys, these narrow alleys, were actually constructed. And again, I'm pretty sure that the living quarters were up in this area here. So our tour guide recommended that we go to this place. It's sort of a little bit further away from our hotel, but still within walking distance, called Magic Ice. She said that this is a large room, kind of like subdivided. There are different places to sit, that is made entirely of ice. And I thought, oh, wow, I've never been into a place like that before. That sounds interesting. And she said that there's statues and artwork that's carved within the ice. And so I decided, hey, yeah, let's do that. So we had some time on our hands that afternoon. That sounded like a cool thing to do. And there I am sitting on that throne. They give you a parka. You enter into a room that's not ice, into a regular room. And you pay, and then you get a parka to wear, not to keep, to wear, gloves to wear, not to keep, to wear, as you enter this large area in the room. It's not super large. I mean, if you probably wouldn't spend more than a half hour to 45 minutes inside of this thing. But different things to see. There's a glass carving of, I guess it's supposed to be a seahorse, and you can see some artwork carved into the ice. You can see that it's a little bit reddish over on the left, a little bit bluish on the right. Those colors are changing all the time. So they have lights that give different backgrounds to everything that you see in here. There's a closer view of that artwork. And some freestanding statues, two of them. And there it is. Yeah, this is Edvard Munch. How do you say it? I don't know. I'm not into art. The guy who did that painting of the person over on the right. Yeah, him. I think I know what he's screaming at if you look over right next to him over on the left. I don't know. But in any event, they had that whole artwork there that was carved in ice. And that's a bar. And so it's inside the ice room. And so, yeah, as part of your admission, you get to order a drink. And it's really kind of interesting because they have these glasses that you can hold, but inserted within, they put ice glasses where they insert the drink that you can actually drink from. And there's all kinds of drinks that you can choose from. There it is right there. So there's the part you can hold. And then here's the actual part that's made out of ice. And, of course, the drink that's inside. So we looked at the list of things that you could order, and so we both settled on what they call the welcome drink, which is a Norwegian Arctic crowberry, whatever that is, mixed with white wine to give you that Arctic feeling. Well, actually, the room itself gave me that Arctic feeling, but in any event, it was pretty good. And there it is. By now, the lights have changed, so now it's reddish, but that's what we ended up drinking, and here we are about to drink it. Okay, so that was a lot of fun, and then we came back to town, and, well, we never left town. It was just a further walk. And we decided to have dinner at this very highly rated restaurant that I had read about online before going to Norway. And I don't know how to pronounce that. Brugeloftet and Stune is the best I can do. So we had dinner there, and it's over by those Bergen buildings that we saw earlier. So I had something I'd never seen anywhere else, and Sue had said, "Hey, if you have a chance to get this, get it." So I did. Filet of reindeer. It was really extremely good. She said it was going to be so tender you could cut it with a fork, and she was absolutely right. This is probably the tenderest kind of beef I've ever had. And I can't relate the taste to anything that people, certainly in the USA, might be familiar with. It wasn't the least bit gamey. That's another thing. It was a very mild form of beef. My wife had Norwegian dried cod. So remember the dried cods we saw earlier. So this is one that is in a gravy of some sort. So it's not dried anymore. I mean, it's softened, and so it's much easier to eat. And Sue told us, no matter where you go, you're going to get potatoes. Every place gives you a side of potatoes, whether you want them or not. So there's our side of potatoes, and I think each of us had only one or a part of one. And then we split this dessert, a chocolate dome, and it had chocolate mousse on the inside, and over in the upper area there, the orange is raspberry sherbet. That was very good. Okay, now day 4, the main event. Again, one of the main reasons I wanted to go to Norway, and that was the fjords. So again, we hired a different guide called, his name was Romain Gillette, and again, tours by locals. And the name of this tour online is called My Majestic Fjord Experience. That's the actual name of the tour. I'm not using the word my in relation to me, but it was majestic. And it was a real fjord experience. So this is what we did. So we're starting out from Bergen. So the first part of this is an 11-hour tour. So this is an all-day thing. Starts at about 8:15 in the morning. So he drives us from Bergen on some roads, not directly across, to Voss. I mean, on the map it says Vossevangen, whatever, but it's also just called Voss, or maybe Voss is a part of Vossenvangen, I don't know. But anyway, so we catch a train from Vossenvangen, from Voss, up to Myrdal, and we have to change trains there because it's the end of the line. That first train is a purely electric train, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. That was really totally awesome. I'd never been on a purely electric vehicle of any kind, let alone a train. And then we go to a regular train from Myrdal up to Flam, Flam, and that is where we then catch a boat to take us on the trip to the fjord, which you can see is scribbled in blue by the people who made this map. So that is our fjord tour right there on the actual fjord. It is actually a 2-hour tour. I mean, you could take a much longer, all of this is fjords in here, right? So you could spend more than a day on a boat trip down these fjords. So this is a 2-hour trip right there. So let's back up a little bit. Here's the electric train out of Voss. You don't hear anything. There's virtually no rail noises or anything on this train. So that's what it looks like on the inside. And here it is on the, you can hear people talking, obviously, but there's hardly any train sounds. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been on a train. So maybe I'm being unfair to trains back home in the U.S., but I mean, this was just like a constant hum. And you can see some typical Norwegian dwellings along the way. And those people, by the way, might have been speaking Asians because we were sitting around a lot of Asians. I don't think that was Norwegian. And so, yeah, just some typical pictures. I am taking this from inside the window, so that's why there's glares. But I thought that was particularly scenic with the waterfall. There were waterfalls literally everywhere along the fjord and on the way to the fjord and then on the way back from the fjord. If you're into waterfalls, go to Norway. And so we get off that train in Myrdal. That's the train station. And we had like about, I don't know, less than 5 minutes or so to get on the next train. But it was there waiting for us. And this is part of the Flam railway system. Like if you were to go to Oslo instead of Bergen, if you were to fly into Oslo and you wanted to get to Bergen or to get to any of the fjords, you would get on the Flam railway to do that. And so this one picks it up from Myrdal to go up to Flam. And this is a more conventional train. It looks like this on the inside, but it was still incredibly smooth. and again, pretty scenic.
Through the ages, many people claim to have seen strange sights and creatures of legend in the Flom Valley. Among them, you find Huldre. Stunningly beautiful Huldre may tempt you with her spellbinding song and lure you into the mountain.
在弗罗姆山谷中，多年来流传着人们见到的各种仙人。人们说，旅行的人们有时会见得到乌德拉仙女。乌德拉仙女住在地下，想方设法地用美丽的歌声。
So you could hear that there was both English and Norwegian announcements being made. What he was announcing, and Romain had told us this was going to happen, was the train was going to stop for about 5 or 6 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, whatever, at this big waterfall. And there is this forest creature, a woman, that is actually a seductress trying to lure people into the forest. I don't think that's a good job to have, but nonetheless, he said to watch out for that and to get off the train. Everyone's going to get off the train and try to take pictures of that. So that's what he was just talking about. You could, again, unless you speak Norwegian, sort of hear what he was saying when he was speaking the English part. So this is the waterfall. It's called, oh my God, what? Kjosfossen waterfall? I don't know. But it was a huge waterfall. Here it is right here. And there is Huldra, the seductive forest creature. And they have this music playing out of loudspeakers when she appears. Notice she was down below and suddenly she's up above. How did that happen? It happened because there's two different people that are dressed identically. And I guess that was her seductive dance. And I don't know about you. I didn't find it very seductive. I just wanted to get back on the train and get to the fjord. So we did. So this was an interesting waterfall right here. But there's this twisty, windy road that whoever lives in that area, I guess, there's some buildings up there, to get up and down that mountain. And now we are very close to Flom. By the way, we saw little villages like this all along the way. Well, not all along the way, but in different places. Flom is not a big town. So we kind of follow that waterway, and again, we're kind of very close. Maybe this is actually in Flom. I don't know. I don't know the city limits, town limits. But we arrived at our boat early, and so Romain met us there. He was not on the train with us. He met us there, and he drove his way up there. And so we had time to kill. So he said, okay, I'm going to take you to a really cool place. And turns out the really cool place is the Stegestein Lookout or Overlook. It goes by different names. So here's Flom down here. So that's where the train let us out, somewhere in this area. And then he drove us along a twisty, windy route. I think it's probably, this is not twisty, windy, so I think it's more these yellow roads. He probably got off here and then followed this twisty, windy with all kinds of sharp switchbacks, because I remember those very, very well. And then there's a little place to park there, and we stopped there. And this is the lookout. Here's a short video. So yeah, it overlooks the fjord that we're about to go on the boat, and you get some remarkable views from this lookout. And I guess it's very customary to have your picture taken there. So Romaine took our picture. By the way, no one's going to fall off there, off this plexiglass thing, unless you climb over it, in which case you're crazy. But in any event, really scenic up there. So Romaine takes us back down. It's almost time to board the boat. And the thing about this boat is it is totally electric. It's kind of like that totally electric train. This was an incredible boat. I mean, you hear the waves being generated by the motors, but you don't hear any motors at all. It is so quiet and peaceful to be on this boat. There were two boats. One is called Vision of the Fjords, and I think the one we were on is Future of the Fjords. We might have been on Vision. It doesn't matter. They were both totally electric. They're both pretty new. You can see that this one was built in 2018. I think they probably were built around the same time. Not 100% sure of that. But in any event, we were either on Future or Vision. This is a photo of Vision, but it's exactly the way our boat looked. So there's places to sit inside and back here inside as well. You could go outside. You could go up to any of these levels to look out. At one point, I looked out back here. We started inside, and then when the boat got underway, I moved to the outside just to take some photos. You'll see that. And then ultimately, after sitting inside a little bit more, I decided to spend most of my time out on the front lower deck, right where that guy is with the white shirt. That's where I was doing most of my photography. So this is what the inside looks like. We sat there for a while. There's a snack bar there. They serve all kinds of stuff, snacks, sausages, all kinds of stuff like that. We, of course, got nothing because of the awesome breakfast we had at the hotel. But it's a very modern vessel. So we started Flom, and the fjord that we are on initially is called the Auerslands Fjord, and that's all in here, Auerslands Fjord. And then the boat makes a left-hand turn to go to, and I have no way of knowing how to pronounce this, Nairoy Fjords. You can see it even has Norwegian letters in it. I don't know how they're pronounced. And so then we go down here, and we ultimately end up at the end of 2 hours in this small village called Gudvangen. Okay, so our tour guide, Romaine, is not on the boat with us. He had his car, and he ultimately met us when we got to Gudvangen to drive us back to Bergen. Here I am standing on the outside of the boat in the back. It is, at this point, very windy. In fact, I have the sound turned off on the video because all you're going to hear is wind. But you can see it's smooth. It's very, very smooth. I've never been on a boat quite like this. There's twin engines. And walking around on the decks a little bit, there was this owl. They did say, don't feed any birds. I mean, there were gulls in the area. They said, don't feed them. And I think they put this owl up to try to discourage birds from coming onto the boat. I once tried something like this back in the 1970s. I had birds that were landing on the side of my car. Long story. I'm not going to get into it. There was a reason for it. But I borrowed a real stuffed owl from the Natural History Museum in North Carolina and put it inside my car to try to keep the birds away. It didn't have any effect whatsoever. I have no idea if this thing is effective, but there it is right there. And here we have some sound. So that's pretty much the sound of what you're going to hear on the boat, looking right over where the engines are. But other than that, you don't hear anything. And if you're standing in front, you really don't hear anything other than wind if it's in a windy area. But here we are on that initial fjord. We started out, there's Flom back there. We started out in Flom. And this, now I'm standing on the outside front deck. And this reminded me of something. This was something that intrigued me a little bit. So here we are. We're heading right through where those two rocks are. Now, if anybody is a fan of Lord of the Rings and focusing on the first movie, Fellowship of the Rings, that should remind you of something in that movie. The gates of Argonath, also known as the Pillars of Kings. Oops, I forgot the closing parentheses. Whatever. I mean, just look at the configuration. It's different, obviously, but it's these two mountains that are coming down onto this water, and in this case, they have the Pillars of the Kings. So again, there's where we were, and then if I just kind of superimpose the kings, you can imagine that it is like Lord of the Rings. I do not believe Lord of the Rings was filmed here. I mean, the mountain configuration in the back is different, but it certainly is awfully similar. So we went through there, and again, there are small villages along the way, typical. You see a lot of these from time to time. There's also a good example of how quiet the boat was, because now I'm standing in front, I'm away from those engines. Don't hear a thing. There's a vehicle making its way up the road, right there in the middle of the screen. There are actual roads that go down from certain levels up above. I don't know if they go to the top or not, and I really don't see any here. I caught a glimpse of something at one point, but hard to tell if they go all the way to the top or not. Clouds that were lower than the tops of these mountains all over the place. We were lucky. It didn't rain at all. It was just cloudy. There you can hear a little bit of wind. Very, very interesting terrain. And now we are getting close to where we're going to be docking. So there's boats that are coming out of that area. It is windier here, as you can hear. So we're going to be docking over in this area over here. But it was just incredible how calm and peaceful it was, especially standing on the outside of the boat, looking out at the front. We passed that boat, just saw it a moment ago in the video. So we go past there, and we're heading to where we're going to be docking. As you can see, there's another boat right there. Very quiet. Check out this thing right here. I'll show you a photo of it in a minute. It might not be totally obvious what it is. Our guide is already there waiting for us. We had spotted him before we got off the boat. Romain, by the way, was great. It was such a pleasure to spend not all 11 hours, because he wasn't on the boat or on the train, but he was really a fantastic guide. So what that object was, the black object, is a model of a Viking ship. That's what that was. I don't think that's a functional ship. It's on land. Okay, so we docked in Gudvangen, and then he drove us to a lookout point, which was incredible. I'd heard of this probably while doing my online research at a hotel called the Stalheim Hotel, another very twisty, windy road to get up there. Once you get on the side road, there's an angle that shows the actual hotel embedded within these mountains. And so we go to the hotel, and you can go onto this deck. They let tourists out. They have no problem with that. You don't have to be staying at the hotel to go out here, but you get magnificent views of fjords and surrounding areas from this lookout area. And again, apparently this is an iconic place to have your picture taken. So Romain came through once again and took our picture at this lookout area. And then we headed back down, getting back to the main highway, and waterfalls everywhere. He said he was going to stop so we could take some photos of these waterfalls because they were pretty majestic. This one especially. And there's another one configured a bit differently. So we're heading back from the hotel back to the main highway. So we got back to Bergen and we asked Romain, where could we eat? We were not super hungry for whatever reason, probably too excited. And so he recommended this restaurant that was walking distance to our hotel called Almuen, or however it's pronounced. He never ate there, but his girlfriend had, and she said she liked it a lot because the dishes were like tapas dishes, so very small portions. And so we had no idea what the food was. We just took a gamble and went inside, and we were able to eat there. He actually phoned on his cell phone to get us a reservation to make sure we could get in. So you can see it's mostly tapas, and there were some main dishes. But you might also notice it's very kind of seafood top heavy in places, mussels. I mean, this stuff is fine, but it's not all that exciting. And the fish soup and stuff, pollock is a fish. Pollock again, fish. So thank God they had today's special, which was beef. So that's what we weren't super hungry, so we ended up getting one portion of that and splitting it along with a side of those grilled vegetables that you see here. The grilled vegetables, they were good. And the beef I was a little reluctant on because beef is either, for me at least, usually underdone or overdone. So the staff person who took our order said, "How do you want it done?" I said, "Medium." This was perfect. This was absolutely perfect. And they pre-cut it, which probably helped make it absolutely perfect. And so we split that, and it actually was delicious. I think it was equivalent to what we would call over here a ribeye steak. And it's all pre-cut. And it turned out to be great. That was a great restaurant choice. Okay, next day, day 5. We go on just walking around on our own. This was a free day. I hadn't scheduled anything. So we step outside our hotel, and what do we see? Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's probably not the first thing you want to see after breakfast, but there it was, right over there. And there is a dinosaurologist adjusting its suit. Okay, so yeah, we saw that. That was fine. And one thing we knew we wanted to do was go up that funicular. And so we go to where you get the tickets, right over in this building. And we stand in line for a little while. They run these things so often, you're not going to be in line for a long, long time. Unless you hit them at the wrong time of day, like if a cruise ship just docks and everybody comes out and wants to go up on this thing. So basically it follows the path right up there. And it goes up this mountain that overlooks the town. The mountain is called Mount Floyen, and that's a view of the city from up above where we have just docked. So it's a pretty scenic view. By the way, there is that fish market. So very close to our hotel, which is there. And just to show that again, try to point this out. I was zooming in at the time. I ended up later that day, actually, at this event over here. And there's the fish market. And we just missed the hotel. So yeah, you get a really awesome view of Bergen from up above. There's a cruise ship that is docked. Yeah. And so there's paths once you get to the top if you want to go hiking somewhere. They're not really long hikes. You could actually hike all the way back down to the city if you want. That would have been fun, but it's a 45-minute, as you can see, 45 minutes to city center. So we decided to just ride the funicular back down. But we did decide to walk up from this area here, up a path to this lake. The main path was closed, the direct path, so we had to detour around and go this way. They were doing some resurfacing of that path, so it was closed off. And so this is what it looks like as we're walking up along that side path and get to the top, and there's this lake, and you can walk all around the perimeter of the lake, which we did, and then head back down. And then we caught the funicular to go back down. So this video will take us all the way down, but it's only 2 to 3 minutes long. It's kind of short, not like the one I shot in Santa Fe, for those of you that may have seen that video, which was about 7 or 8 minutes long.
Are you going to do a little the young people?
The third language comes Scandinavian.
The young people don't understand Scandinavian.
English.
And Finland is a difference.
Yes,
Very different. Yes.
But most Finnish people, in fact, all they speak Scandinavian, they do not. Now they only speak Finnish.
If you're looking carefully, there's the fish market. It's a good orientation. The indoor portion, the outside portion. Our hotel is back there. It goes through some short tunnels. Actually, you know what? There's tunnels everywhere in Norway, like between the airport and the city. Oh my God, tunnels. There were tunnels heading up north as well toward the fjords on the driving portion of the trip that Romain took us through. They are everywhere. They're all very well done. They're pretty awesome tunnels. There's another tram that's going up the mountain in the opposite direction. There's a really cool dog, looks a little like mine. Mine is black, this is white.
That's also one of the reasons.
And now we're getting very close to the bottom. Another tunnel. All these videos and photos I shot on an iPhone Max. The large version of that, the Max Plus.
We were all Vikings in the old days.
So we're going to get off. We're going to depart the tram over on the left, and then these people that are waiting to go back up will get on from the right. So that is definitely a worthwhile thing to do. Doesn't take all that long. Okay, so what happened next is my wife loves museums. I don't. I find them really, really boring unless I can zip through them in about 10 minutes, and that doesn't work for us. So typically on our free days, regardless of where we are, we split. Okay, she goes one way, i.e. museums. I go another way, i.e. the great outdoors. So we went from the tram, and but there's our hotel, by the way, right over here. The tram is, well, there's Mount Floyen up there, so we docked somewhere down here. So I made my way through the city. I was just using Google Maps to navigate with, because it shows you where you are, what direction you're facing. I figured what I wanted to do was go through the center of town somewhere, which I ended up doing. But then I wanted to walk along this side of this waterway because we hadn't been on this peninsula yet, and then walk back on the other side. But the walkway is not very extensive on this side. You can't really get right next to the water except in a few places. So I ended up walking a little bit on the interior, which was fine. It was nice. We're walking through neighborhoods. So here I am embarking on my walk. You don't see a lot of building art there, but this is one that I came across. There were a couple of things here and there. And here is that event that we saw from another photo that I had no idea what it was. It was all in Norwegian, But I walk across because I heard music playing, and I thought, oh wow, it could be a live band. Well, it wasn't a live band. It was this guy that was singing along to pre-recorded music, but it was all very, very well done. And I guess he's singing in Norwegian because I didn't understand a word of it. But anyway, I asked somebody who was there. She said, I missed the band by about 10 minutes. And he was like in between, and another band would be coming by soon. But I didn't want to hang around. And so, because, I wanted to go out on that peninsula. But anyway, it turns out this event was a fundraiser of some sort for disabled people, which kind of explained why I saw a lot of people at this event that were in wheelchairs. So it was all for a good cause. So right across the street from that was this music pavilion. And so I'm going to walk past that down the street. I come upon this West Norway Museum of Decorative Art. These buildings are all very, very decorative. Here's a closer view of that. Notice the sign. It says, actually, the dead are not dead. I don't know what that means. I think it has nothing to do with the Grateful Dead or zombies. Maybe it does have to do with zombies. I have no idea. So I just kept walking. I came upon a magpie, a European magpie. We don't have these in Connecticut. So I saw a lot of these when I lived in Germany, but it's been a while since I've seen one. And so this bird was sitting very cooperatively, very close to where I was walking, and let me take its picture. So here I am at the end of that peninsula, and it turns out the name of that is North Park. It translates roughly to North Park in English. It was very, very windy here. I totally got rid of the audio on this video clip. You can see it was windy. Just look at the waves. Actually, I didn't get rid of it. I diminished it greatly. There's a gull. By the way, there's no such species as a seagull. It doesn't exist. There's many species of gulls. No such thing as a seagull. So if you ever call one of those things a seagull, try not to. So I'm walking along. Now I'm on the opposite side of that peninsula, heading back toward town. There's this huge boat called the Horizon Arctic. I have no idea if it's like an icebreaker. Maybe it was. I have no idea. But you can see it's certainly not a tourist boat. And so here I am on the opposite side from the Bergen, those historic buildings, which you can see across the way. There's a good view. And we met up back at the hotel and decided to have dinner at this restaurant that I had heard about when I did the research online near the hotel, very close, like 1 minute from the hotel, called Bear Vestland, or however you would pronounce it in Norwegian. And there's a more fancy version that's just called Bear. So I think they're sister restaurants of one another. But in any event, we went to this one because we didn't really want anything fancy. But we thought this would have been our last dinner in Bergen. I'll explain that in a moment. But we go inside. There's some interesting artwork on the wall. And there's some more out back there. And again, it was kind of seafood heavy, but found things to eat. We ordered this, I think we split this, rainbow carrots. And I had something called meatloaf. I thought, okay, I can't go wrong with meatloaf. But this meatloaf was different. I don't know what kind of meat it was made out of. This was not beef. This did not taste like the kind of meatloaf that we have back here. It was a much denser quality. It tasted okay, but it wasn't the meatloaf that I was quite expecting. My wife, of course, had seafood. This is local fish. I'm not exactly sure what the local fish was, but it smelled like fish, and so I want to get it off the screen. Okay, day 6. So my wife and I now go walking around. We ended up on that same peninsula, actually, and we actually went to two different peninsulas. Starting out at this one, you can see this huge tourist boat. These are the ones that come and dock, and all the tourists get off. And walk by this restaurant here. Our guide, Susan, had told us about this. I think she walked us by it, actually. And this place is a very popular small outdoor restaurant stand that serves hot dogs of all kinds of varieties. And she said, one of the things we should get is the reindeer hot dog. And that sounded really intriguing. But, we already had a huge breakfast each of the days we were there. We had dinner plans each of the days. I wish I knew about this the first day, but I didn't, because that was the day we got there before we had our tour with Sue, when we ended up at Egon to eat, because we didn't want something that was really heavy, and this would have been perfect. But anyway, long story short, we never got to eat a reindeer hot dog. I wish we had. You can see all of the various types of hot dogs and sausages on their menu. Bratwursts, chili dogs, everywhere, everything, including, of course, the notorious reindeer meat sausage. That's what it looks like. And this is a reason to go back at some point to get a reindeer sausage. So we're walking around some more, and some more artwork. Again, kind of unusual for that city. This is a very old church we walked by dating back to 1761. And that day, we managed to work in one final meal. This is the day we actually had to check out of the Opus 16, but they held our luggage for us. The place was wonderful, by the way. The staff was super helpful, super friendly, and I highly recommend that hotel for lots of reasons, that being one. But anyway, I wanted to go back to this restaurant, the first real restaurant that we ate at when we were actually hungry, because there were other things on the menu that I wanted to try, one in particular. So we made a reservation earlier that day when we knew we'd be able to do this. And so my wife had this open-face shrimp sandwich. This is like tons of shrimp piled onto this bread. And I had what I wanted to have, the Norwegian lamb fillet. So you remember the first day I had the reindeer fillet, but I also saw this. This is Norwegian lamb, and I really wanted to try this as well. It turned out to be totally awesome. Very lean meat. Not quite as lean as the reindeer, so you did need a knife to cut it, but it was not tough by any means. Not gamey at all. So what we had decided to do was, because we had a 6 o'clock flight out, 6 o'clock in the morning flight out of Bergen, going back to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam back to Boston, we figured it was going to be ridiculous to stay in our Bergen hotel and try to get from there to the airport at such a ridiculously early morning hour, because, you got to be there 2 hours in advance, go through customs, whatever, TSA. So we checked into the hotel at the airport, which was the Clarion. See, originally I thought we would be having dinner, quote unquote, at one of the airport restaurants, but it's a small airport, and we're dealing with basically getting a sandwich and taking it with us somewhere. So not very interesting. So that's why we decided to stay in Bergen for dinner that day. So there's that infamous Bergen question mark sign you can see opposite the airport. You can also see that's a pretty small airport. So I waited hours and got this view before it got totally dark outside. They light up that Bergen sign, obviously. And that's, I think, a mostly full moon that I managed to capture as well. So we slept there that night, and we get up 4 in the morning or some such, maybe a little bit before, 3:30. And we managed to get, walk to the rest of the way to the airport, kind of through a parking garage, no big deal. And so we take a flight from Bergen, ultimately back to Boston. What's wrong with this image is that the flight from Norway went to Amsterdam, so it was the reverse route of the way we went there, but you get the general idea. It was not a direct flight out of Norway. That would have been nice, but, whatever. Amsterdam is a nice airport. So we got back to Boston, and, I thought I was going to end it here, but not quite, because now we have to pick up my dog. Our dog trainer and friend, Mike, takes care of my dog Luna while we're away. So here I am. I got out of the car. I'm about to walk up to Luna. Luna sees me at this point, and she goes berserk. That's Luna, barking, jumping. That's Mike's dog, Winter, in the background. I'd say that's an excited dog.
Hello, Winter. I'm not
Her
coming
ears
here with
are
you.
back. She is so excited. The normal posture of those ears is upward.
It's beside itself. Oh yes, I got a Luna kiss. Hi, Mike. Yeah, what do you expect?
First time.
Yeah, well, that's the real Luna.
Yeah, he's telling us Luna didn't bark at all while he was taking care of her. She barks at our house like day and night, sometimes in the middle of the night. So, of course, we have windows that she can see out of during the daytime at least. And there's all kinds of animals around our house. Deer, there was a bear once, and squirrels. She stopped barking at squirrels. Chipmunks, she doesn't care for them, but she doesn't really bark at them. Rabbits, she hates. Neighbor's cat, she hates. She'll bark at them. She'll bark at anything, even if she's imagining that there's something to bark at. So she's quiet the whole time she's with our friend, and then she starts barking when I get back. Okay, I think she's trying to tell me something. I don't know quite what. Anyway, that was Norway. I'm paying Edvard Grieg's Peer Gynt, the first suite in the background. So even if you don't know Edvard Grieg, you certainly know this. Don't even have to be much of a classical music fan to know this tune. So I highly recommend Bergen, Norway. A great place to spend a couple days. And be sure to do the fjords. It's really the main reason for going.